Hey everybody, it's me, Lisa. I am back again for another episode of In Vino Veritas. Today we are going to try another red. This is called La Marchesina. This is a red from Italy. This is made from the Nero d'Avola grape, which is native to Italy. It's actually native to southern Italy, from the Sicilian kind of region, and it is also known as a Calabrese grape. So let's give this one a shot and see what we think of it. Alright, this actually retails for about 15 bucks, so it's in the usual realm of what I'm drinking. So the first thing I notice when I open this is there is a lot of smell coming out of it, very kind of fruity. So, but at the same time, if you look at it, it doesn't have the super thick kind of red color of like a Cabernet. It looks more like a Pinot, like on the edges. It's not quite as red. It kind of fades into an orange. So that's interesting with all the smell, but not so much of the color. So I smell a lot of cherry, very cherry. So far it's shaping up very much like a Pinot would. So yeah, there's a little bit of sourness to it, like a sour cherry. It is a lot drier than a Pinot would normally be, so it also has almost a flavor of like tobacco or some kind of spice to it. Not quite like a big Zin would have, like a big pepper, but there is a certain kind of earthiness to it that's not fruity. It's more kind of in the spicy realm. Yeah, so there's some flavors in there. But at the same time, like I said, this isn't heavy like a Cab or a Zinfandel or something like that. This is kind of very like a summer drinking wine. You could totally do something spicy with this, like a spicy shrimp or some other kind of seafood, or even like if you had like spicy chicken tacos or something like that. I could totally see that as well. But yeah, this would be a nice, easy summer grilling out with the chicken and the seafood and the veggies, and yeah, you could totally do that. So anyway, I'm going to get into this for a little bit, and then I will come back and I will tell you a story. Okay, so hey, I'm back and I've had some of this. This is an easy drinking summer wine, so all of the things that I said before. So today I am going to tell you a story about when I did trail rides in Rocky Mountain National Park. So this was on horses, obviously, because why would you do camels? And so I did this every weekend, and I was like 18, so I was a kid, and it was my job to take folks up through the trails in Rocky Mountain National Park. So this one time, there was this family that had come up, and they had been up the week before, and the kids had such a great time that they wanted to come again, but the parents, of course, didn't. And so they said, hey, will you take our children up into the mountains on a horse and bring them back safely? And I said, sure. Well, I didn't, my boss did, but it ended up falling to me. So we saddled up the horses. So there was 3 horses. There was my horse, whose name was Buck, because he was a buckskin colored horse, not because he bucked. And then there was another horse whose name I actually don't remember, but he was like a pinto horse of some sort. Well, we'll just call him Pinto. And then there was another horse named Scout, and Scout was specifically requested by one of the kids. And there were two kids. There was a boy whose name I have no idea what it was, and a girl whose name I also have no idea what her name was. I just know that she really wanted to ride Scout, and Scout was a great horse. He was one of those horses that would do anything you asked him to do. So we went on this ride. It was a 4-hour ride. It's 2 hours up, 2 hours back. And you go up to see these waterfalls, and it's fantastic. And then you come back. And so we go up, and it seems all fine and everything. These kids are kind of, they're good kids, right? Like, they're not making trouble, and they're not yapping and being a pain in the ass. So I'm like, yay, good for you. And so we get to the place where they're supposed to end up, and there's a so what happens is you get to the destination, and then there's a tie rail for all the horses, and then the trail riders, they all go and look at whatever it is. In this case, it was a waterfall, while I tend to the horses like a good servant. And so that's what I'm doing. So the kids all scurry off to their little waterfall, and I get to I loosen up the cinches on these horses' saddles, and Scout is acting a little wonky, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sure he's fine. And so I go to the other horses, and I loosen up their cinches, and I turn around, and Scout is laying down. And he's still tied to the rail, mind you. And for anybody who doesn't know, this is really unusual behavior for a horse. Horses generally don't lay down in the presence of a predator, i.e. a human, because, technically we're predators. And also he's still tied to the rail, so that's weird. So I go over to him, and I pull him back up, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on, Scout? You're supposed to be the good horse. And I notice that he is funky. So he's got colic, basically, is what I have in my amateur veterinarian self have deduced, because colic is a disease that horses get. It's not a disease, it's a condition that horses get where their intestines cramp up and makes them extremely uncomfortable. And horses do not have the ability to throw up. So if they eat something wonky or things get really gnarly, there's nothing they can do about it. It just makes them really uncomfortable. And a horse's first inclination is to roll on the ground when that happens, which is really dangerous, because then their intestines twist and can explode, and it can mean certain death for a horse. So colic is really dangerous. And luckily or unluckily, as the case may be, I've actually had horses colic before. So I know the symptoms, and I know the short-term treatment when it's not serious and they don't need surgery, because if they do roll and things get really bad, they need surgery or else they will die. So, and I would really like to avoid having a horse die on a mountain while I'm hanging out with a bunch of kids. So I look him over, and it's clear he's got all the symptoms of colic. His stomach muscles are all tensed up, and it's just clear. And so I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Well, there's really nothing you can do. The treatment, so to speak, for colic in horses is that you basically just make them walk. They have to literally walk it off. So I wait for the kids to come back, and I kind of watch him, and he doesn't seem fine, but he doesn't seem terrible. So when the kids come back, I tell the little girl as calmly as I can, I say, you know what? Scout has a tummy ache. So, while we're riding back to the barn, if he starts acting funny, you just let me know, okay? And she's like, okay, yeah, sure, fine. So, so I put the kids back on the horses, and we start back, and I put her right after me because I don't want her last because I want to be able to see her, right? And so we're walking. We're about 30 minutes maybe down the trail, and I've been checking kind of, incessantly behind me to make sure that everything is okay. Just because, I know how these things go. And so I turn around at one point and I see her. So we're on a part of the trail. It's, like 4 feet wide, maybe. And there's like a hill that goes like this, and then a hill that goes like this. So it's a fairly, like, I wouldn't say it's dangerous by any means, but it's not a part of the trail where you can just fuck around. Like, you gotta stay on the trail. So I look back, and Scout is on his knees. And this girl at no point said, hey, my horse is acting funny. And so I'm just stunned. And I look at the girl, and my mouth is just agape with surprise and horror. And she doesn't say anything. She just looks at me, and she looks at the horse, and she looks back at me, and she, like, with a look that says, mine's broken. And I'm like, no shit, yours is broken. I told you he's broken. And I want to tell her, get off that horse before he rolls and you're still in the saddle, because then you will die. But my brain won't send that message to my mouth. So instead, I jump off my horse and I run back there. And in this amount of time, she has had the thankfully good sense to get off. And she had the even better sense to get off on the side that where the mountain goes up, which is technically the wrong side of the horse, if you're a horse person. But at least we all know he can't roll uphill. So whatever happens to him, she's going to be fine. So I'm like, oh my God, thank you for getting off. And so I go back, and he's just on his knees. So I give her the rein. I say, hold my horse, partially because Buck is a guide horse, which means he's a little more difficult to ride, and he can be a little tricky. So I don't want him to, like, wander off. Also, I need to give her something to do, while I figure out what the hell to do with Scout. So she's holding Buck like a good little trooper. And I look at Scout, and I look at the other kid who's there, who's just like on his horse going like, can we go yet? And so I realize, like, okay, this is my moment. I gotta take care of these kids. I gotta take care of these horses. And I'm it. And mind you, I am 18 at the time. I'm really just a kid myself. So what I do is I kind of like pet Scout's ears, to let him know, like, hey, dude, I care, because a horse doesn't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I'm also a little worried that he might not get up, which is a really big problem for a horse at any point, regardless of whether or not they're in the mountains. So I give him a little pet, and he's still just sitting there on his knees, like a cat, kind of. Like, he hasn't rolled, he hasn't like given any indication. Anyway, so I kind of like put my hand under his like jawbone, and I pull it, and I'm like, okay, come on. And he gets up, and I'm like, oh my God, thank God you get up. And then I realize, okay, I'm not getting on this horse, and I can't put that kid back on this horse. So, and I also can't make a, 10-year-old little girl walk down the mountain. So she has to ride my horse, he's specifically a guide horse, which scares me a little bit because you never know. But I just pray that she'll be okay. So I get him onto Buck, and I say, just let him do his thing. He'll walk behind us, and we'll be all right. And so then I take the lead with Scout, right? And I am walking next to him because I'm not about to get onto that horse. And so we walk, like 20 minutes in. Everything seems fine. And then suddenly Scout loses it. He is like flailing around on the trail like he's drunk, stumbling everywhere. And so I put my hand on his shoulder because, of course, that's going to hold a 1,000-pound horse up, is my hand on his shoulder. And we just kind of try to keep moving forward. And it lasts for like 30 seconds. And then it ends. And I think, okay, well, that's weird. That's not a symptom of colic that I am familiar with. But who knows? Maybe it is. So I keep walking, and basically like every 20 to 30 minutes, maybe sooner than that, he does this thing where he stumbles like a drunk horse. And I have no idea what's going on. But we keep going, and I check on the kids, and they seem fine. So I just keep going. I just think, okay, we're going to get to the barn. And so we finally get to this area of the trail where, like, there's a park ranger there. It's like a pullout where there's a park ranger, like, she's just chilling there. She's not usually there. But, like, that's where regular people can bring their horses and, like, unload and, like, go up into the mountains. And she's like, oh, looks like you're having a little trouble there. And I'm like, oh, really? What was your first clue? And so she says, I could call a trailer, but that's going to take at least an hour for it to get here. And so I'm like an hour walk from the barn anyway. So I figure, you know what? Don't even worry about it. I'm just going to walk through this trail because I also have these children with me, and we're going to do this. Even though I know what is ahead of me on this trail, and it's not the steep part of the trail, it is the watery, muddy part of the trail. And so I end up walking through foot-deep water. Like, this water was like almost up to my knees, and sometimes it gave way to foot-deep mud. Which is awesome. And it's like this glade that's just like perpetually flooded in the Rocky Mountains. So, and then of course we have to, after that, we have to walk across the highway where all the cars are, which is really awesome too. So, but by the time I get to the barn, the ranger, as she said she would, she radioed ahead, and she told them that I had a sick horse and that I was coming. So they were kind of ready. He had already called the vet. The vet was not sure. Like, he didn't really know what the symptoms were. But even though I was like, it's colic. So we get there, get the kids off, blah, blah, blah. Somebody takes care of them, the whole 9 yards. But my work is not done yet because Scout is still sick. And so and also we have to make sure that he doesn't lay down and roll and kill himself. So we get the saddle off him and the bridle, and I'm just like, I take him out back to the pasture, and I think, oh, I'll just like make him walk in a circle around me, and he is not having that. So I have to actually walk around in a circle next to him because he doesn't give a shit that my feet and my back are so sore and I'm so tired. Which is kind of hypocritical because he totally just walked that whole distance too. But whatever, he's a horse. That's what horses do. He's stronger than I am. And so I keep walking and walk. And I can't tell if he's getting better. And so luckily, my boss, who's the manager of the barn, doesn't make me stay until the vet gets there. I tell him like what happened and all the symptoms, including the weird drunk walk that this horse has been doing. And then he lets me go home. And so the next day, when I come up and ask him how things are going, Scout's fine. And the vet did come, and the vet gave Scout a bunch of mineral oil, which is a common treatment for colic or in any number of intestinal issues that horses have. Because I don't think I mentioned this before, but horses can't throw up, so it's a one-way system. And so mineral oil helps clean everything out. As it sounds disgusting, but yeah, that's the way it is. So anyway, so the vet gave Scout a bunch of mineral oil, and Scout seemed fine, and there was no like weirdness with his walking, and there was no like residual effects. Like Scout seemed like he was suddenly 100%. So to this day, I don't know if that was colic or if it was something else. Could be he was colicking and he ate something wonky. Could be he overheated. Could be that his saddle was too tight. I don't know. I didn't saddle him. But that was probably one of the worst days of working at any job that I've ever had. But it was also kind of one of the most amazing because not only did I get Scout back to the barn safe and sound, and he ended up being fine, but I got 2 other horses plus 2 small children back to the barn, and I was like a grown-up about that shit. So anyway, I didn't know that I had that in me at the time, but I did, and I still do, and now I know that I can pretty much handle whatever life decides to throw at me. So anyway, that's my story for the day. Drink happy, drink often, and we'll see you next time.